So, good afternoon, everybody. We are in session 4, the last session, and the topic is leveraging R&D for achieving higher growth. Let me introduce you to my speakers. Bijal Matkar, R&I Director, Solvay Research and Innovation Center, India. She is a chemical engineer with 16 years of experience in process engineering and research and innovation with leading specialty chemical companies. Currently, she is responsible for R&I programs in the field of specialty chemicals and material sciences, as well as general site management. Our another speaker is Professor G.D. Yadav. Everybody knows him, Emeritus Professor of Eminence, Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai, who is one of the topmost, highly prolific and accomplished engineering scientists in India. He is internationally recognized academician, researcher, and innovator, with seminal contributions to education, research, and innovation in green chemistry, engineering, biotechnology, nanotechnology, and green technologies. We also have among us Mr. S. Bharathan, Executive Director R&D, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited. Mr. Bharathan has worked in HPCL, Vizag, and Mumbai refineries for 24 years in different departments and in corporate office on margin management and project process for 4 years. He has varied research interest in all areas of refining, energy sustainability, development, and application. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Kamlesh Pai Phondekar, Head Research and Development and Nutrition, Animal Feed Business, Godrej Agrovet Limited. He is responsible for driving the long-term as well as short-term innovation agenda for crop protection business and palm oil business. With over 29 years of rich experience in R&D, he has worked in past with companies such as German Remedies, Dr. Reddy's Lab, Nalco, and Syngenta India and Deccan Fine Chemicals. We have with us Mr. Mayuk G. Varvadekar, Senior VP, R&D Fine Organics Industries Limited. With an experience of over 33 years, Dr. Varvadekar is a leading team of motivated chemists and technologists driving the innovation and development activity of Fine Organics Group. During the course of his career in academic and industrial research, he has to his credit several international publications cited extensively and a few international patents. And we have Mr. Dr. Ganeshan Balakrishnan, GM R&D and Special Projects Sudarshan Chemical Industries. With an illustrious career spanning over 25 plus years, Dr. Balakrishnan has gained experience in various fields like pharma, polymers, catalysis with pigments, and waste management. As a well-recognized scientist, he has proven track record of successful implementation of 30 plus projects at commercial level. He is also a co-inventor in 15 plus patents. So without wasting any time, after the introduction, let me call upon Ms. Bijal Matkar. And she would be talking about the industrial use and how patents which are of industrial use can be of value. So over to Bijal Matkar.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen, and a very good evening to all the listeners and the eminent panel here. Patents, if I say, is it's a word that brings in a lot of respect in the industry, whether it is in India or all over the world. But before we talk about patent, I would like to take a step back and think about the mentality that is associated with the patents. So if we really look into the patent in the current industry structure, what happens is it is still considered to be something which is an ivory tower. The awareness of, in general, not only for patents, but also for intellectual property awareness in the Indian sector at this moment is limited to a very, the top 2 or 3% of the academicians or the industrial sector. And if I cite some numbers, less than 1% of India's GDP goes into research, right? Like the money that is invested. And out of that, only 35% of investment that comes from, private sector. So unfortunately, what this leads to is that 90% of the students, which are a core rich crowd of the Indian sector, they never get their eyes open to patent, or they never apply for patents or anything that is related to IP. So, what my thought process on the importance of patents is that patents need to not only be the citations, but they need to actually create value in the R&D setup. And let's talk about the objectives. Why should I increase the patents? Just because there's a developed country that is doing it, I want to put India in the top 3 or the top 5 ranking. I don't think that is going to attract a lot of traction, because the objective has to be aligned with incentive. And if the incentives are aligned, that's where, whether it is patent or it is trademark or ways of doing business, is what going to take traction. So recently, I came across a couple of initiatives which I was just looking around. First of all, is going to the core people, like the young crowd of the country, which is probably in their high school or early college days, and creating an awareness of science, because they say that from science we will derive the progress of mankind. This is what Solvay believes. So what STEM does, how STEM can change people's lives, how it touches how science touches your day-to-day lives. That is an awareness factor that is going to be very important. The second thing, I was actually personally in touch with somebody who is a part of the Atal Tinkering Lab, right? So this is like a Government of India initiative, and they were looking into creating awareness and also sending students from not only from the developed cities but also from small towns to ISRO, to NASA, and creating awareness on how innovation can actually help. And innovation is not related to, like just an ivory tower somewhere, but innovation is everywhere. So I think we need to actually deprioritize the concept of innovation, that it can happen only in a certain sector. And second thing is, in the Indian mentality, which I have seen, is normally based on sharing and less on individualism. So even if people, they create something, they create a IP sector, they don't like to go ahead because it is too complicated a process, or it is for somebody who has a lot of money or a lot of time, and especially SMEs don't participate in this patent structure. So all in all, not taking too much of time, what I would say is that we have to make IP in general, not only patents, but IP in general, a common thing to reach, be available to the common man, and create a systematic, probably a digital based awareness campaign, not only one, but a couple of them, to make sure that the Indian patent community or the structure becomes like more tangible, and the incentives which are realized out of it is becomes a common man's knowledge. So that's from my side, Mr. Gupta.
So let me then call upon Professor G.D. Yadav and try to understand from him the new areas for leveraging R&D investment and how R&D infrastructure in universities and labs needs to be leveraged in the country. So over to Professor G.D. Yadav ji.
Okay, so it's a very interesting topic. I can go on talking for hours, but few points I want to make. Okay, one is that the R&D investment required to be globally competitive has to be linked to the technological innovation, and that leads to economic growth. And I will give you some example from the Western world. And India wants to be a $5 trillion economy soon. How can we do that without investing in R&D and R&I? Otherwise, we'll never be able to do it. And since I'm related to chemical and allied industry, I think chemical and allied industries, including pharmaceuticals, which is a part of chemical industry, the investment in R&D must go up. There must be many more IPR generated, and this IPR has to be utilized. Of course, in the past, it never used to happen, but it is going to happen soon. And you see in the R&D expenditure, okay, so this size of the ball, this shows the volume normalized to the US's total R&D spending. You see, India is way below. Look at China, look at USA, look at Japan and South Korea. And all these countries are far ahead of us. They know that they have to do it so that their industry can, do something good for their country. In China, a lot of academic institutions are doing R&D research, which is funded by, funded by the industries, and then this technology is given to the industry. That rarely happens in India, barring few IITs and institutes like ICT and maybe some institutes like IISc Bangalore. So if you see that overall ranking, the top ranking in Europe, so Switzerland is the one which spends a lot of money on the R&D, followed by Sweden, okay, then USA, then UK, you see, and in comparison with that, India is well below. We are 48 number. So India has one of the highest rises due to its role in global value chains and innovation network. But however, our rank is 48 and we have to go up in this. So if you see that the contribution to R&D, okay, across 10 different countries here, the government spending is very high in case of India as against the Western world. And look at China. I mentioned a few minutes ago that China spends a lot of money on R&D. In comparison with that, the Indian industry does not spend so much money. Perhaps they do not believe that the academia can do good work, or they themselves can, have some technologies which is borrowed from some MNCs and things like that. Okay. So of course, the revenue which is generated by 5 years CAGR, you can see that the most innovative companies were the biggest R&D spenders. So R&D spending is required for this. So, and according to me, universities are the hub of innovation and entrepreneurship. Since I belong to Institute of Chemical Technology, I can tell you that very proudly, India's GDP, 8% of India's GDP is created by alumni of ICT. Mukesh Ambani is an alumnus of ICT. Okay, perhaps you know that. So his is a very big company. And ICT has produced 19 Padma awardees, which is also a record for a small institute. Okay, it's a very big record. And so one of the things what is required is filing patents. And so this is the age of patent, and technology is a capital. So the university's policies must be to encourage for patenting. In the past, what used to happen that there was no support provided either by the government or by the university itself to the innovators. I was the first person, believe me, in University of Bombay at that time who applied for a patent, and I was given permission after 1 year. So you can imagine. And not only that, they wanted me to submit 32 copies of the patent document. So forget about the NDA and anything. So that was the condition. And this is not applicable to the Western countries. And you can see that prior to the Bahar-Dole Act in USA, universities obtained approximately 250 patents. In 2000, that number went to 4,000. And in the case of nanotechnology, they hold 32% of the patents versus 1% prior to the emerging technologies. And Indian universities were too conservative and short of vision. So you can see that one of the things I want to quote here is Susan Hackfeld. She is the former president of MIT, and she said universities are the engines of economic growth. So if we want to grow in India, government and the industries must support research in universities and academia, because they can have kite flying ideas and whatnot. Okay. So one of the things which you can see here is that in 1970, India, China, and USA were not far different. Of course, the value of Indian rupee at time vis-a-vis American dollar, okay, was quite high. Maybe about 3 rupees a dollar or something like that. And you see, there were two tipping points in this. And their economy went up like anything in the case of United States. even with reference to China, China also went ahead. And so who was responsible for that? These two tipping points happened. See, this should be 1974 here, and this is 1995. So the reason was there were two major centers in USA. And these centers were one in the West and another is in the East. That is the Silicon Valley and the Town. So what did they do? They solved the problems of national and international importance. And their major two universities were Stanford and MIT. Look at their sizes and look what they did. So almost 33% of the GDP was created by these universities. So why our IITs and universities cannot do that? So what that is one of the points which I've been always telling, that we can do it provided there is an encouragement. Like, for example, the CSR funding of 2%, why it is not taken to 3%, and this money is liberally given to universities and IITs so that they can innovate. And that will be a very big plus point, and so that we can achieve that so-called $5 trillion economy. Right now, we are importing almost 80% of API from China. It is easy to ban apps, but you cannot buy feedstock for some of these drugs or whatever. So it is required. So we can see that. So universities, research and universities must also encourage startups, which was not happening in the past. So you can see one of the reasons why universities were not doing what the companies are doing, that there was uncertainty about the research, and there was a non-marketability factor because professors were not smart enough to sell their technologies, or there was no setup in the university system. So this is what, and of course, and everybody wanted to publish. They valued publications more than patents. And one of the best examples is Professor C.N.R. Rao, who is Bharat Ratna. He said he published, he does not like to patent, although he had many patentable ideas. So in a way, you get publicity, you get, all sorts of honors and all, but that does not result into economic growth. So yes, so now a lot of universities are investing on protecting the IP, which is developed through extensive research and development. And there is the unvarnished truth is that most of the protected IP remains underutilized, and the universities are no exception. So one of the things which has to be done by the universities is that they have to, go to the market. They must have the university and industry collaboration. And what is lacking, the missing technology transfer office or technology licensing office, and that is the need of the hour. With this few words, I want to stop my presentation here, and if anything is required, I can come back again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, Professor G.D. Yadav, for what we can say, illustrating the entire scope of R&D through your slides. And you very well showed the example of US and the two universities, how they are contributing to the US economy or the US GDP. Now I come back to Mr. S. Bharathan, who is the Executive Director of R&D HPCL. Sir, one is the technologies which you are indigenizing, and how will this benefit the oil and the gas sector? So over to Mr. S. Bharathan.
Thank you, Praveen, and very good evening to all my fellow panelists and all the participants of this seminar. So our prime focus as an applied research center in oil and gas sector, HPCL Green R&D Center in Bangalore, is focused on indigenized chemicals which have been extensively being imported in the past several decades. So we are focusing on developing them on our own and straight away applying them in our strategic business units, which are already being started doing that. We do hold some of the license which were earlier exclusive to only some few global licensing companies. Now we also started working on them, and we have started licensing them. And in the coming years, I do believe we will be able to go into new areas also, and we may slowly turn into a global leader in all these areas where we are working. Now, energy is always getting transition from one form to another form. So we aspire to be in whatever is good for the society and what is available cheaper, to be into that through innovation and building the next requirement for the next generation to come, so that all can use energy in a safe and affordable way. So coming back to indigenization, so we have been working on technologies, I already told. Similarly, catalysts and chemicals are being imported. Some of them, Professor also presented in his earlier presentation when he gave. So we are working on developing them on our own. There is quite a big success in that, and we are also taking to into the other places, beyond India also. So beyond indigenization, the next major target is bringing innovation in new areas, so that when the energy transition takes place, we will be able to cater to, and unlike right now, 80% of oil is being imported into India, and gas also. So when we go to the next transition, hopefully there will be no import dependence. There is some basic material which still may be required when you are doing to the transition. So we are working on areas where even those materials will not be required when you do that energy transition. So this is regarding the indigenization. And the next main area where innovations are to be brought up, we'll have to reduce carbon footprint, we'll have to reduce the land, and we'll have to reduce waterproof footprint. So these are the next three areas where innovation is being brought. Even in the world, these may not be available today. So basic research we are doing through collaborating with the academic institutes, and we take up the applied research. When this is completed in the lab scale, we'll take it to the pilot and the industry scale. So that is how these technologies, translational research is being done by us. And coming back to I will just close by telling only one item as a follow from the earlier presentation. It was told that publications are more than patent. Definitely yes. So we definitely are very conscious about that. Patenting will be first, and patents will be commercialized first. After commercialization, to promote those products and technologies, we go for publications. So that is the strategy that is being followed. I thank you for hearing, and I will come back if any specific questions are there in the follow-up.
And sir, what is the net saving that you are doing with this indigenization that you are doing? And I see a beautiful building. Is it the HPCL R&D Center, Bangalore?
You're right. That is we call ourselves Green R&D Center. So I invite over this whenever possible, you can visit. For these savings, typical refinery, India has about 22 refineries. A small refinery may consume about 50 crores of catalysts and chemicals, and larger refineries may consume 500 crores of catalysts and chemicals in a year. We have already achieved almost 15 to 20% indigenization efforts we have done. And in the coming years, we believe minimum 75 to 80 we will be able to do in next 5 years.
And sir, are you actively participating in terms of filing patents?
We do, since to protect our IP, and we are a commercial organization, patenting is one of our prime focus. We have done 300 patents in the last 5 years. We have got grant of 110. Out of 110, more than 50 are international patents. And the commercialization ratio, almost 25 patents are being used as a commercialized products or technologies. So the ratio is about 25% for us. Internationally, 15 to 25 is a good number. So we do patent all whatever we are inventing or innovating.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Mr. Kamlesh Phondekar, sir, and if he can throw some light on what should be the ideal, say, R&D budget with respect to turnover or with respect to profit, and why it should be increased, and by what proportion it should be increased. So over to Mr. Kamlesh Phondekar. You are mute, sir. You have to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Praveen. Thanks for your introduction, and really appreciate giving me opportunity to participate with other panelists. Yeah, and good evening, fellow panelists and the listeners. Right now, if you really see, as Professor Yadav also mentioned, globally, India is the 6th largest producer of chemicals, which covers more than 80,000 commercial products. And India's chemical industry is extremely diversified and it can be broadly classified as bulk chemicals, specialty, pharma, agro, petrochemicals, polymers, and fertilizers. Yeah? And the industry is expected to reach $300 billion by 2025. So this is a really good growth which we are looking at. Now, one of the primary drivers for sustainable growth in a chemical industry continues to be innovation. Yeah? And the old age approach of innovation of chemical organizations and status quo might no longer be an option. So that's not possible. So this is purely because we have a big change has occurred in the industry, and there could be more to come. And those companies, or it's very difficult for companies to remain competitive if they do not stay ahead of the technology curve. And this is possible only by investing in R&D, by developing new products. Yeah. Now, if you really see, chemical companies in India spend hardly 3% of their revenue on R&D. Whereas if you look at global innovators, generally in a chemical sector, they spend somewhere between 8 to 10% of their revenue. And there is a big gap. Now, if you really analyze why do we have this big gap, it's purely, I think Indian R&Ds are mostly working on a development part of R&D, which is for the more of the generic molecules, and highly focusing on typically improving the yield, the quality improvements, cost-effective processes. Whereas if you look at the innovators who spends majority of their investment on research part of it, yeah, and therefore the discovery of a new products is their prime focus, and they spend comparatively lesser amount on the life cycle management of the product. Now, where is this investment required? Why do we really need this investment? If you really consider our Indian chemical industry, more investments are really required, primarily focusing on the life cycle management of a product. Now, as Professor Yadav also mentioned, we have a lot of products what we manufacture in API or agro, but we are highly dependent on the raw material required for those products from China. And this really creates a lot of volatility in the market, right? So the key part, we definitely need to focus a lot of a backward integration. How much backward we can go till we reach probably, people like HPCL or some of those chemicals we can really use right away from the chemical processes in pharma or agro. So we need to be highly backward integrated to ensure that, we reach the required supply security to sustain our, the required chemical growth. Also, this will substantially reduce the dependency on the imports of the raw materials. Yeah, and the second area which really need to focus is investing on lean processes. Now, lean process, which will also focus on the new technologies. Like, for example, if you are looking at a process chemistry part, then something like a flow chemistry, which is really getting good traction. But really, we need a good investment to really scale up this innovation. Yeah? And green chemistry, sustainable chemistries in a process development, like we talk about atom economy, the catalysis. We heard yesterday's Nobel Prize in asymmetric catalysis. These are the areas that need to come up in the industry at a much higher level than what we already have. And therefore, a lot of investment is required in these areas. Again, we cannot forget the principles of sustainability. So reduce, recover, recycle. So a lot of investment is also required in these areas. And in my opinion, these are the really focus areas for next few years where investment in R&D needs to go on to take this chemical industry forward to reach our $300 billion in 2025 and further on.
Thank you, sir. I would request Dr. Mayuk, if you can throw light on the patent, and Professor G.D. Yadav showed that the difference in terms of where we stand in terms of R&D spend versus other countries. So keeping that into view, how open innovation will help in what we can say increasing patents with respect to industry research, university partnership. So over to Dr. Mayuk.
Thank you, Prashant, for the open space. The problem of starting a little late is some of the participants have already spoken what I wanted to say. So I have to realign what I'm saying. But nevertheless,
that's also about innovation, sir.
Yes, so I'm doing my job. Okay, what I'm going to say here are my personal views, and they don't reflect my employer Fine Organics views. So having said that, and having started the moment on a lighter note, let me do some serious talking. In a recent article by Professor Paul Raj, Arogya Swami Paul Raj and Dr. Anil Kakodkar, former chairman of Atomic Energy Commission, they described the government, university and industry interaction as a triple helix partnership. So the first helix is government, the second is the universities and the research institutes, and the third is the private industry R&D centers. So what happens? I mean, government has the role to set up policies, prioritize the needs of the country, giving a follow-up for what frontier technologies need to be carried out. More importantly, attract global talent and investments, and also to incentivize the spend. The universities, which are supported by the talent of pool for the countries, What here I have a little rebellious note to say. My observation, our premier institutes generate excellent manpower for corporations, but are found lacking when it comes to R&D personnel. I mean, I'll back this with figures. The world ranking of research institutes and universities, we have only 3 in the list. That too at, I think, a ranking of 218, 228 and 233, namely IIT Mumbai, IISc Bangalore and IIT Delhi. So what happens? I mean, this is also one of the cause of poor innovation happening in this country. I think Bijal just mentioned about the spend of less than 1% of GDP, while the OECD and other developed nations have a minimum of 4%. I have with me figures of R&D funding in Germany, and it's a revelation. In 20 years, ending 2018, the spend rose from 45 billion euros to 105 billion euros, of which 69% came from the private industry and only 25% came from the government, the rest being internally generated by universities. So this gives you a fair flavor of what is happening vis-a-vis India. But I don't want to sound pessimistic. I'm an eternal optimist, and there are a lot of good news coming. Indian R&D spend has risen by about 7.9 CAGR over the past 10 years. And a better news is that in the current budget, the government announced a national research foundation, which will contribute about 100 billion rupees, corresponding to about 1.37 billion US dollars annually for its 5-year starting this year. This will be focused on interdisciplinary work, research and in researches in colleges and universities. Now, what ails the industry as such? In an earlier presentation last year, I had mentioned this and I stand by it. Most of the chemical industry today looks at R&D as a cost center and not as a investment opportunity. These things have to change. And hopefully they are changing, because otherwise that 7.9% rise would not have happened. I want to stress on what is. I would like to talk about the open innovation model, which is the current trend that is happening, because what it means is there is a interaction between multiple players, because a corporate cannot have all the answers to its innovation. There is a several pool of expertise outside a corporate, which probably knows better things and the way of doing it. And therefore, this trend has to come to India. I'll cite you an example. Procter & Gamble in, I think, in the early 2000s, started a program called Connect and Develop as an innovation model. And what happened was their investment and their innovation rose by about 60% in those formative years. There are several such examples, but time constraints, Prashant will ring the bell, so I'm not going into it. Talking about patents, I think India is not yet ready for patenting. There are several factors, but one main factor that I know is companies need to have deep pockets to get into patenting. There are costs, there are long stretches for examination and publishing of patents. In the meantime, the chemical industry decision makers lose patience, and then they decide, oh, it's not worth it. But the time has come for this. In terms of prioritization of innovation, I think what we need to do is look at the Indian context. The Indian context is mainly agri-based, and I want to make the point of what should be done as a biorefinery. Biorefinery is something what petroleum industry is doing. Pardon my saying so, but some of the petrochemical guys may not be in sync with what I'm saying. But this is needed because we have a lot of agri waste, and a lot of chemicals can be made out of those agri waste, which are today being made by the petrochemical sources. Sustainability is an effort, but again, here I am a little strong about what I'm going to say. That is, I get the feeling that this is an effort to reduce cost, to comply with regulations which are changing every day, and they seem to be superficial to me. I will give you an example. Bioplastics. Lot is being said about them. That's a good beginning, but very little is being talked about that bioplastics need composting, and the composting is done at very high temperatures, 60 plus. So is that a solution, or is that a problem to a solution? You will need industrial composting sites to get into this kind of business. So I come back to again the concept of biorefinery. And I feel the time in India has come to have this as a thrust area. Recently, I had the opportunity to be in a place in France called Reims. It's a champagne country, but that is a later issue. There is a cooperative run by an agricultural sector, and they have a very huge tech park at measuring 160 hectares. And what they are doing is simply awesome. When I came back with a feeling of mixed reactions, awe and also depression, because India is basically an agri-based economy, and you see every winter we are looking at stubble burning and climate changes and those kind of things. Why can't we use such things? This is where I think the government policies can come into picture. They can focus funding for this kind of work and get things moving. I have a lot to say, but I think let's Prashant, you're mute.
Mayuji, I will come back with the second round. We are still to finish the first round.
Yeah.
And we have one more speaker, Mr. Ganeshan Balakrishnan. Sir, you have many patents to your name, and I saw you have around more than 15 patents. So, keeping that into view, sir, how is your company leveraging R&D investment now with what we can say 15 patents under your belt, and how are you planning to commercialize these patents? So over to Mr. Ganeshan Balakrishnan.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. So like, you know what Mr. Mayuk just said, the views expressed here are purely personal, and it should not be attributed to the company for which I work. To answer your question, Mr. Praveen, that you asked, all these patents, fortunately or unfortunately, have come when I was working for a multinational. Okay, and that is the the bottom line. I think I have answered that question. That we as Indians don't believe in patenting.
Sir, I'm adding a supplement to you. How do we become? How Indian companies can become multinational companies?
It is simple, sir. I think the first thing that we lack is we don't believe in R&D. We believe in, as somebody mentioned, in a process development. Already existing thing, we tweak around, and that's it. And we are happy doing that. Still, I mean, that is the truth that is happening. Hopefully, things are slowly changing, but over the past years, whenever, I look into the kind of work that happens, most of it is like, process, process tweakings to fit into the business scenario that we are into. So having said that, the first thing that we need to bring is a social awareness. Many of these companies, where we work today, and I think most of us will agree that we do the social development work. And what we do in social development work is commendable. That, we go into, adopt some villages or some schools, or, build infrastructure for the society. Fantastic. This should be done because that is the need of the hour. But at the same time, how many of us, if we can ask ourselves, we go there and teach the general public what innovation is all about, what scientific thought process is all about? I don't think we are doing enough on that. I'll just take a very simple example, sir. If you can go back a few years when we were in our colleges or schools, how many of our teachers, would get an opportunity or make an effort to go into, the big institutes like, let's say, IITs, IICT, or IISc, and interact with the, the faculties there to understand what is happening new in the field of science. Just that curiosity is really missing, and vice versa. How many of, the big institutes, I had the opportunity to, be a part of that great institute, ICT, and interact with, some international, renowned scientists. But how many of us would go back and give back something, or, kindle that, that spark into our quote unquote juniors? I don't think many of us are, are not doing it. It should be done in a big way. So that's what I believe what should happen for a scientific change to happen in this country, which, if I'm telling that the scientific world is not doing it, I'm a part of it. So, I too am to blame there. So on the patent front, specifically to answer your question, being an Indian, I worked for a multinational and all my patents belong to that company. Okay, even though I am a part of it as an innovator. And that means, we don't lack the scientific bent of mind. We lack the infrastructure, or the companies don't believe in spending, money in patenting the stuff that they are doing. These are two aspects. The third one is also, when I search for a US patent, when I just go Google US patent, so-and-so, I get all the information, including the patent. If I can see it, read it. But if I go and search for an Indian patent, unfortunately, maybe I may be wrong today. I cannot download an Indian patent. I mean, I have to really search. And when I went today, I was, searching for some data that, how many patents have been filed by India in the last year. That information is also missing. I mean, I could not find it from that Indian Patent Office site. So what I meant to say is, our, the highly educated, industrial workforce aware of what a patent is? I think we have to start from there. I mean, this is my thought that, we as the scientific, team who is, working in industry, the thought process of innovation, that mindset itself should change. That, like, I mean, if today a PhD goes and says that, whatever he studied in, he spent his, the UKG, LKG, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever he has studied in the classes, that is of no use. R&D is like that, you are spending, you are increasing the knowledge base of the company. And once you increase the knowledge base, then only you can, get into a college and earn your degree like a PhD. So I think the industries should, look at R&D in such a way that it is an investment. In R&D should be looked at as an investment and not an expense. That is point number one. Point number two, I was reading another very interesting article. Let me just pull that out. I just love to, see that it's an overview of, the article headline says an overview of Dunning-Kruger effect. What this says, this is a phenomenon which, makes a person feel that he knows more than what actually he knows. Now, the other side of it is, a person who knows more thinks that he does not know as much as is required. So, two different poles apart statement that is being, put together. So, when somebody, becomes an expert, quote unquote, the direction in which, the company should be moving, maybe that direction or the focus would change, because the thought process comes in that, whatever that person is thinking is correct. And vice versa, if we take a look, like a outside in to the box, we may find that, the direction that is being taken is not correct by that particular industry. So this paradoxical, statement that we are talking, this needs to be also a part of the curriculum, when we are talking about, inculcating an R&D culture into the society. I would put it as society. It is not to the system. And, in today's world, if you see, we talk about, the use of process intensification, or for that matter, alternative clean energy systems and things like that. But one thing that still, needs to be corrected is that, the fact that we work in silos. The chemists, they work in silos. The engineers, they work in silos. The marketing, they work in silos. This is often seen, even though, we don't agree to it, but it's a truth that, when a person is developing something in the R&D, if I had to scale it up, my work is done. I have, done it in the R&D. Now it is up to you to, understand this and scale this up. The way, here, I can take the example of Sudarshan now, is that we involve the engineers, the finance, the marketing, the procurement, everybody, when we start the project. And then we take them through the life of that project till it sees, the commercialization. So I think that change also should be coming in our research mentality. And like, Professor Yadav sir told that, there should be more interaction between the, academic institutes where the fundamental research happens. We cannot deny that fact. That combined with, the astuteness of the R&D that is being run by companies, because for a company that is running an R&D, money is the focus. For an academics, still, this is still that I'm talking about. It is the power of publication, or power of knowledge that comes in. So if we can merge these two things together in a good way, I think we have a very bright future. Thank you.
Thank you. We have completed the first round. Let me take a quiz break, and I would request my delegates to please answer the question in ask a question box. For the speakers, we cannot see, but the delegates, you please answer the question in ask a question box, which is on the top left hand side of the screen on our platform. So I will repeat, please answer the question in ask a question box, which is on the top left hand side of the screen on our platform. And the first question is, where is HPCL Green R&D Center located? Where is HPCL Green R&D Center located? Please type in your answers in ask a question box. I have a series of questions, and the winner, whoever is answering first, will get Amazon vouchers. What is the full form of PCPIR? I repeat, what is the full form of PCPIR? Third question, which country is the third largest consumer of polymers in the world? Which country is the third largest consumer of polymers in the world? And my last question is, let me give a pause, 10 seconds. What is the full form of CPET? CIPET. It was recently, the name was changed. So what is the full form of CPET? So delegates will keep on typing their answers. So, and I will announce the winners after the end of this session. Now let me come back again to, we are reversing the order. So I will ask Ganeshan Balakrishnan sir, if knowing the fact that we do not file enough patents, so, but that is not going to help us, because it is our country, it is our own people, and this industry is looking at 10% growth and is also looking at huge contribution to GDP in years to come. So with that into background, and with a renowned scientist like you having 15 patents, so how do we solve the problem? So if we keep on blaming, that's not going to help us. And as you rightly said, when you do any product or when you do any R&D, you involve people from all the stakeholders. So here we have people from all the stakeholders, and I'm looking for answers which will help the government or which will help the industry moving forward. So we are left with only 15 minutes. So I would request your answers to be short and precise, so that we can close sharply at 6:30 and everybody can go back to their home if they are in offices. So over to Ganesh Balakrishnan sir.
To be very frank with you, I don't have an answer for how we can, improve the mentality of the companies to start patenting more. That's my answer to it.
And sir, I will tell you, the same question arises. I was moderating for the panel discussion on digitalization, and one pertinent question came, is that how do we convince the CEOs, or how do we convince the management that they should opt for this particular technology? So my only answer after listening to the people in that on that particular platform is, we have to keep on convincing our management. We have to keep on educating our management. We have to keep on telling that this particular company globally, which is in the same sector as yours, they have been able to do. They were a small startup. They, what we can say, have increased their growth. So similarly, in the same way, we can also grow. So Swami Vivekananda says, if we are not able to be successful, that means we have not done our job properly, and we have to keep on doing it so that we become successful in the long run. So that is my short answer. If you want to add anything, otherwise I will move to the next speaker.
I totally agree with you. It is the persistence that is the only answer, but is a long drawn process. I mean, that's what I would say. Yes, with the current scenario, if I'm able to show my management that, a particular process has an advantage as far as the, the economic advantage, I think still there is a scope to hasten this process of patenting. That's the only way I believe today, as far as I see that.
Mayukji, if you can talk about how technologies like AI and ML will help in increase in number of patents. We are seeing a lot of digitization happening even in your sector in R&D, with the molecule modeling coming into picture, and the role of IT has definitely increased even in R&D, whether it is for documentation, whether it is for say coming out with new formulations. So how do you see the convergence of these technologies in R&D?
Okay, let me give you my perspective of things. Patenting is a process which has to be looked at from a holistic angle. Today we are comparing our patenting procedures with the developed countries of the world. I would say we started 50 years after they have started. The real innovation happened were between the World Wars I and II by all these countries. So we have a long way to go. The other aspect is we have to have a mindset. We have this thing about Hindu growth rate and those kind of things. But to get into this mode, you have to look at your education system de novo. I think our system today is mainly rote learning. We don't, like BG just mentioned, we don't encourage idea generation. This has to happen at a very primary level. You know what? Some years back, BASF had started a traveling exhibition worldwide. It was here in Mumbai for a week, and they encouraged students to come and visit them to understand what innovations are about. And they had some of their top 20 innovations on display. So I think this is one way of doing things. It will take time. It's not just about convincing the CEOs of the organizations. It is also about convincing the general situation. I mean, if a patenting process is going to take such a long time, I am not going to be following it up all the time. It's going to take a lot of my time in doing these things. So organization would need new manpower to do this. For that, they need qualified people. And at a later stage, what happens is the technology and the technical expertise stays aside, and it's the patent attorneys who take over. So these are the costs that one looks at also. So I think there are several other features, but since I began, let me give this podium to other people to talk about it.
Thank you, Dr. Mayuk. Dr. Kamlesh, what are the new areas for leveraging R&D investment? So if you can give a point-wise remark.
Yes. Just to, I heard a lot of speakers, they almost spoke about the same thing. I think if you really look at, some studies have indicated that R&D impact on chemical industry is non-uniform across its subsectors, because we have various subsectors, as I mentioned earlier, and therefore the type of the chemistry what we do, the scale of operations we have. If you see the scale of operation in pharma is very different than what you have with oil and gas, right? It's a completely different, and therefore the R&D impact is also very different. Now, then this also means the R&D capabilities are also very different. Then the scaling up of innovation is very important. And if you really see what we have learned during the COVID time, very clearly, we definitely need to have technologies for self-sufficiency. Otherwise, you have seen what's happening for the vaccination around the globe. Yeah. Okay. In my opinion, the key leveraging R&D investment is, now industry does not have enough bandwidth to undertake the basic research. I guess one of the speaker also mentioned about that. And therefore, the good collaboration between industry, academia, and government is absolute essential. Now, as far as industry academia linkages in chemical sector is concerned, as others also said, there are very few exceptions where results are really very good. But on an average, typically results are not very good in generating industrially relevant knowledge. Yeah. Now, also the good collaboration is required between, if you see the biologists, the computational, the data science, all this needs to really come out to really leverage the R&D to the next level. And that's very, very important. And if you really see, enough investments are also required to have an integrated R&D capability building. Yeah. Now, also, now for example, government also needs to step in and develop something like parks where technology and innovation centers which can formulate, if somebody has a new technologies coming in, so people can go and try their piloting and test being done there. So the government also needs to play an investment role there. Now, as you also rightly mentioned, if you really look at the digital technologies, that's not getting far behind, because if you see, typically for a chemical industry, until now, the process of discovering, developing new products has remained largely unchanged. Primarily, everything goes in the lab. I mean, this may require a lot of experiments, right? And which is time consuming and adds cost. Now, if you really see the latest trends, if you see some of the big, large global chemical companies, they are heavily investing in digital capabilities, which will allow them to perform simulations, right? And these simulations tend to help companies to reduce failures during the product development phase, which can save the cost, which can save the time. And now you have a time to do more of a field trials or clinical trials, whatever you need to do. Yeah. And I guess Indian chemical sector also needs to move in this direction. And I'm not forgetting my favorite topic, really the key part also, improving our environmental brand image to sustain future growth. Typically, if you really see in a general public's mind, chemical industry does not have a very good brand image. Yeah. And we all need to work towards it to change this, focus on the sustainable and green technologies, which I already spoken about. So unless we change the mind of the general public, this is not good to have. And therefore, this is very important for all of us to work together and build actually the brand of the environmental and sustainable future. Yeah, and this. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kamlesh. I would request Mr. S. Bharathan, sir, apart from your HP Green R&D Center in Bangalore, do you also tie up with, say, research labs and universities? And how do you balance the two in terms of your own R&D center? What is you are focusing on? And with respect to research lab and university, what are you focusing?
We have a clear defined program that fundamental research, basic research will be done through collaborative institutes only. So we have right now about 25 projects running across Indian Institute of Technologies, Indian Institute of Science, various DSIR labs, CSIR labs like Indian Institute of Petroleum, IICT Hyderabad, so and so forth. We have such projects going on exclusively for fundamental research. So the lab work will be done there. Once they are successful in that, then we take up the piloting and scaling up and take it to industry level. So that way we collaborate. We do have some foreign collaborations also, so at a smaller level. So we do collaborate with some foreign universities also on some new areas we are doing. So this is with respect to how the collaboration is taken and how that is used for our own research purpose. Though you are not asked, I'll just take 2 points here. One is regarding the ideas generation. So we do conduct new generation ideation contest every year, where all the universities and colleges, the students we involve, mainly we focus on postgraduate and postdoctoral fellowships who are doing to tell their ideas, and a high cash rich, the incentives are given for the best ideas. So that, and those ideas we take forward further for commercialization activities. So that is one idea, one activity. And within our R&D center, we conduct Ideathon. Every year for a period of 2 weeks, we conduct Ideathon, where we encourage everybody, not only the scientists, even the supporting staff, outsourced as well as internal, to give their ideas. And surprisingly, the best ideas come from the other places other than researchers. So that is regarding ideas generation. We can do that definitely. Then we have an innovation process where a culture is built, then a process are laid out. Finally, we enable these researchers to proper tools through which, if you follow, definitely there will be a success. And our aim is final products commercialization. To safeguard that, to safeguard the IP, what we do, we patent. So patenting is not taken as an expense for us. The amount what is spent is much less for the value of the product finally what we get. So it is not taken as an expense. It is taken as a safeguard for our own the next business activity what we are doing. And we have a white space analysis available with us, where we do this white space analysis to exactly see where the gaps are there in both the technologies and products, exactly go and do research there, and straight away an invention or innovation comes where which can be patented. Last, we have incentive program for all our researchers who are successfully patenting. So that is also an added incentive, actual incentive for them to go and file patents for the commercialized activities what we are doing. Thank you.
So thank you, sir. Thank you, Bharatan, sir. Now I request, before I'm going to change the sequence here, and we'll give Professor G.D. Yadav the last word. I think he can sum up very well instead of me. And I would request Bijal Matkar, if she can focus on the government policy framework. I think there is a lot of, on the patent side, there is a lot of things which have been rectified. And I think in India, last year we have seen tremendous growth on the number of patents, but still it's taking a lot of time for patents to be given, and it's still a lot of work needs to be done. So let's hear from Bijal what are her views with respect to government policy framework, with respect to R&D, and how it can be enhanced.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen. So I think I'm very passionate about this topic. The reason for that is, like, today R&D or R&I does not find a niche. It's a niche. It has to be handled in a delicate manner, but it does not find policies written of its own. So there are things which are government and university and industry, but I don't think that there is an integration that exists today where it can be brought together all on the same platform in a more written, systematic, documented format, right? Like what to do, what not to do, what's the good way of doing it, where is it that industry can help, where is it that government can help. So policies and documentation, this is the first thing. Second thing which I would say is yardstick. So today, like, even R&D or R&I in India is taken as the same yardstick where you are on a manufacturing side. So whether it is related to giving some permits, or whether it is related to the local labor laws, we are under the same platform, while our requirements may not be the same as a typical manufacturing setup. And this I can tell from my own experience, because I come from manufacturing, I come from technology management. So we need to change that, because just to give an example of my own research center, on an inclusion perspective, we have people from more than 16 Indian states in the city of Vadodara today. While if you really look at, and they have their different requirements, right? And as a result of it, I need some more incentives from the government to make sure that we keep this talent pool happy. And as a result of it, but if the yardsticks are going to be same as manufacturing in terms of labor laws, it becomes very difficult for me to look into that. The second thing on the yardstick is also, instead of saying the typical things that we are weighed against on a manufacturing perspective, you can weigh me on what am I doing to increase STEM awareness in my local system? Am I supporting my local colleges, chemistry colleges or chemical colleges or IT colleges, So such things, the KPIs can be different, and we are ready to take up that challenge with the government. But the yardstick needs to change. For the benefit of time, I think I would just end it one statement that today I am at this moment at 6:30 in the evening. I am sitting in a GIDC, which is India, like the Gujarat Industrial Development Corporation. I would be very happy if I would be sitting in Gujarat R&D Development Corporation, right? So if I have a unit of where R&D is taken seriously on a sector basis, that would be a step change in the mentality for everyone. Thank you so
So,
much for that.
so Bijal, you are saying from GIDC to GRDC.
Yes, I would be very happy, honestly.
So I think that day will also come. It's not far off. We are all optimistic, and COVID has taught us many things. We never thought that we will do these things, but somehow those inherent skill sets needs to be harnessed, and it will be only be harnessed by people who are on the panel because of the years of experience that they have. And as somebody said in the panel also, that we have to nurture the talent. And somebody said if we are looking at good teachers, then we will have to go back to the school. So if we go back to the school, then only we will have good teachers. अगर अच्छे गुरु होंगे तो अच्छे teachers बनेंगे. So with that, let me come back to our guru for this panel, Professor G.D. Yadav, to give his final comments, and then I will announce the winners and also some brief remarks for today's event, and also brief you about the tomorrow discussions that we are going to have. So over to Professor G.D. Yadav, sir.
Thank you so much. It was a very interesting panel discussion, and everybody brought forward new ideas. What I could summarize is that Indian industry can do it. They can certainly collaborate with academic institutions in more than one way to increase their wealth, to add to the economic growth of the nation, and also promote innovation, research. One of the things is that the IPR is a wealth. And like industries are doing it now, more pharmaceutical industries are doing it in India, but others are also not behind. So that, that is required. Remember, no idea is a bad idea unless it is proven otherwise. And that is what has to happen in all laboratories, whether it is in industry or in academia. Okay, so many times in academia, people want to solve solvable problems, quote unquote, solvable problems, so that the student gets his degree. So real innovation has to come. So from day one. So even if some idea fails, there is a offshoot of the idea which can be included in the thesis. Okay, then patenting requires some sort of ecosystem and the encouragement from management, whether it is industrial management or academic institutions. The directors and vice chancellors must be patent friendly. I call it patent friendly. If they don't know what is the meaning of patent and they ask you some silly question, then there will not be any innovation. So this is very important. Not only that, having patents in one story, protecting that right, it costs a lot of money. And even to file a patent in India, it requires a lot of money, and then international, you can imagine. So you need some sort of support system. You need some sort of endowments, which can be created by, with the help of industries. And at the same time, all colleges and universities must teach IPR to the students, like environmental courses, because environmental courses became part of UGC syllabus because it was mandated by the Supreme Court. So don't you think we should have this IPR, courses for students and faculties? The internship, the professorship supported by industry, the chairs, for example, are the projects. I will tell you one example, the Prime Minister's Fellowship, which is operated by CII, where 50% of the money is given by Department of Science and Technology to SCRB, and 50% is given by the industry. And the whole idea, there are about 100 fellowships, but not all are filled, which is very surprising. Does it mean that our industry is not supporting research, or our academics do not have a idea worth to be supported by this grand organization, CII. I have 5, 6 of the Prime Minister fellows with me because all these projects are supported by industry. We have got patents. So obviously I'm more confident of doing it. And they always write to me, sir, do you have any other idea where industry can support you? So that kind of things, important. And we also know that not all patents can make money, but some of the patents can block others' entry into the business through technology transfer or something like that. The technology transfer can be achieved, the commercial research is required. Like for example, in academic research can be certainly be commercialized. That can be done through licensing. So you must have a technology transfer office, you must have a licensing office. Then you can transfer your proprietary rights. You can also have joint ventures with the industry, which this concept is not there in India. And the industry is also not enthusiastic about it. Maybe they can have, startup company, university incubation, like IIT Madras has a very good, beautiful incubation. And I'm chairman of this DST, is a big committee on innovation, incubation on technology entrepreneurs. We have been supporting academia, IITs, and some other places where this money is given so that innovation happens. And of course, one of the things which can be done is through patent enforcement. Because, suppose somebody, steals your ideas, breaks your patent, it is better to negotiate and get money out of them rather than going to the court, and which is time consuming. And we know that sometimes the cases are heard in the grandson's time, not in the grandfather's time, because that kind of situation exists in India. And suppose if somebody breaks your, steals your idea and your patent and implements it, we don't have a proper mechanism, unfortunately. So that has to be so, I will tell you one of the example is that, Purdue University and Wisconsin University, they negotiated with these big companies, IT companies, and got tons of money because they had definitely broken their, their law and the IPR, and obviously they had to pay. So that kind of thing is happening in the Western world, which does not happen in India, because faculty members are not aware of it. They are not interested in it. Only thing as I say, I always say this, and I used to say when I was the vice chancellor, I used to tell to my colleagues, patent, publish and prosper. So you should publish also, because just taking patent is not enough, because people must know that you exist. The industry will come to you only when they do patent search or they know that you are also publishing, and good journals, high impact factor journals. That is what is required. So this was a very interesting panel discussion. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed others' views on this. And I'm sure, many more things can happen in the future. So once again, I thank all of these, panelists on behalf of Prashant. And so,
thank you, sir.
We can leverage R&D for achieving higher growth.
Sir, you have given us a very good headline. PPP and PPP.
Yes.
So PPP will happen here, public-private partnership. Public-private partnership will help in what we can say, as you rightly said, patent, publish and prosper. So if you are looking at doing it individually,
I can say it because I have got 112 patents. I think I'm maybe.
So that's the reason. So that's the reason these wise words can come only from gray hairs like you, sir. And you have been doing a yeoman service to the chemical community, and you are also there in a lot of board as board members. So you are really advising companies to go for the best of the technology. And people like you can be the brand ambassador for these R&D investment to increase from whatever percentage that we are talking to, say, 9 to 10% to from a single digit to a 2-digit level. With this, let me end my panel discussion on leveraging R&D for achieving higher growth. Let me thank Ms. Bijal Matkar, R&I Director, Solvay Research and Innovation Center, India, Professor G.D. Yadav for beautifully summing it up, Emeritus Professor of Eminence, Institute of Chemical Technology, Bombay, Mr. S. Bharathan, who is heading the HP Green R&D Center in Bangalore, a very beautiful center, and I liked your tagline which says developing happiness. I think not many companies are focusing on that, And if we are able to do that, I think our R&D center will be a great center for attracting talent. Dr. Kamlesh Fondekar, sir, Head Research and Development, Godrej Agrovet, doing a lot of research on crop research and palmolin oil. And Dr. Mayukji Varvadekar, Senior VP R&D, Fine Organic Industries Limited. Mr. G. Ganeshan Balakrishnan, GM R&D and Special Projects, Sudarshan Chemical Industries Limited. Before we wind up, let me announce the winners. The first question was with respect to HP Green R&D Center, and the answer is in front of the screen. If you see the Mr. Bharat's screen, you will see HP Green R&D Center is located in Bangalore, and the winner is here is Mr. Janeshwar Hegde, Global Technology and Sourcing, VASP India Limited. So he is the winner for the first question. The second question was, what is the full form of PCPIR? The full form is Petroleum, Chemicals and Petrochemicals Investment Region. And the winner is, Sir, Mr. Hemant Mishra from your team, Assistant Manager, HPCL, has won the prize, sir. So I don't know whether he's from the R&D center, but you can confirm whether he's from the R&D center or not. The third question was with respect to which country is the third largest consumer of polymers in the world. I was also not knowing about it, but the answer is India. And this and the winner is Aruna Mantha, Energy Engineer, Reliance Industries Limited. And the last question was, what is the full form of CPET? Earlier it was called Central Institute of Plastics Engineering and Technology, but recently it has been renamed as Central Institute of Petrochemicals Engineering and Technology. And they have also set up a center recently, which was inaugurated by Prime Minister and our Chemical Minister in Rajasthan, where they set up the first Petrochemical Institute. So, and the winner is Ravindra Ghorpade, Manager, Cosmo Films Limited. So we had a very interesting day today. It started with just summing up 2 minutes. I'm really sorry that I have taken 15 minutes more than the scheduled time. Being the last panel, I had that privilege of doing that and getting the best out from all of you. So we had the inaugural session, and we had Sri Bhagwant Khubaji, the chief guest, Union Minister of State and Chemicals and Fertilizers, New and Renewable Energy. And we had a mix of both young as well as old people. And we had a very good session on policy changes. Then we had a series of presentations. We had an interesting session on digitalization and Industry 4.0. Then we had a session on Indian CMSR technical session. And this is one regulation which is supposed to come this year or the next year. And so there's a lot of curiosity on how this CMSR will develop over a period of time. We had a session on petrochemicals, and we got a very good speaker lineup there. We had Group President Reliance. We had people from BPCL. Subhik Jena was there. Saugata Chaudhary was there, Head of Petrochemicals from HPCL. Manoj Jha was there from Indian Oil. Sanchita Banerjee was there from ED Special Projects Oil India. And the moderator was Sudeep Maheshwari. We had another presentation. And then we had this leveraging R&D. Just another 1 minute. We will start tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So I would request all of you to please join us at around 9:50. Please visit the stalls. There are 11 stalls that are there on our platform. And these are all digital and virtual. You need not go anywhere, but you can visit from the click of your button. We have the first panel is on specialty chemicals expanding its horizon. And we have Vinti Saraf Mutreja from Vinati Organics, Adnan Ahmed sir from Clariant India, Mr. MP Agarwal from Sargent India, Mr. Sohab Royce from Tata Chemicals, Rahul Tikku from Huntsman, Mr. Yogesh Kalra from Galaxy Surfactants, and the moderator is Amit Gandhi, MD and partner, Boston Consulting Group. We have a session on sustainability, and we have Sameer Sumaya sir, CMD Godavari Biorefineries, Mr. Maulik Patel, CMD Meghmani Finecam, Mr. Ankur Singh, Head Strategy and Business Development, DCM Sriram, and Mr. Sabine Paipruch, Data Analytics Engineer from TreadMiner. I will be the moderator there. We have a session on pharmaceutical, because these are all interlinkages. So what we have done is in this next gen, we have taken chemical, we have taken petrochemical, and we have also taken pharmaceutical, because these are interlinked. And in this session, we will have Mr. Rajendra Chunodkar, President Manufacturing Operations, Lupin. We have Mr. Prashant Sarma, CTO, Cadila Healthcare, Mr. Sudarshan Jain, Secretary General, Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance, Dr. Harshdik Joshipura, CEO, Innovacin, Milan Patel, Joint MD, Troika Pharmaceuticals Limited, Mr. Sudhir Turaskar, Senior Business Director, Asia South, Business Line Healthcare, Evonik India, and I will be the moderator for that session. Then we have two parallel sessions, agrochemicals, doubling India's exporters, farmer income, and next-gen leaders. We have in the agrochemical, we have Dr. Vishal Chaudhary from DCPC, RG Agarwal from Dhanuka Group, Mr. Shagar Kausi from UPL, Mr. Ravi Varapu from MFMC India, Mr. NK Rajavelu from Coromandel International, Dr. Archana Kumari from the PMFI, and the moderator is Mr. Vishwanathan Rajendran, partner, Kearney India. The next gen leaders will be moderated by me, and we have Mr. Kaushal Soparkar, MD, Megmani Finecam, Mr. Megha Mehta, Director, Deepak Phenolics, Mr. Ankit Patel, ED, Bordal Chemicals, Mr. Miri Gogri, Head Corporate Strategy, Aarti Industries, Mr. Aviraj Choksi, MD, Apcotex Industries Limited. And the last session is on hydrogen. This is a very good session, and this is the energy of the future, or the clean energy of the future. And there is a lot of buzz internationally as well as in India with the formation of Hydrogen Council. And we have a very eminent panelist here, Mr. Dr. R.K. Malhotra, DG Federation of Indian Petrochemical Industry. He was earlier Director R&D Indian Oil. Mr. Vidya Ratan Sharma, MD, Jindal Steel and Power Limited. We have Sturle Harald Pedersen. He would be joining from Norway. Chairman, Greenstat Hydrogen India. Mr. DMR Panda, who is focusing on, he's GM Hydrogen, and NTPC is betting a lot on hydrogen. Mr. Anurag Pandey, team lead, Reliance Industries, who is heading the hydrogen part there. Mr. Jitendra Goyal, GM R&D, Toyota Kirloskar Group, and Dr. Klaus Braun, Director R&D, Elliott Group. And this will be moderated by Amrit Singh Dev, Senior Managing Director, FTI Consulting. So many thanks to all of you. So it was an entertaining session. It was also a session where you got a lot of ideas, where all the experts briefed you about what's happening and what's going to happen in the other sectors. You will have to tune in at 9:50 a.m. Till then, goodbye and namaste, and thank you, everybody.